Call to order this regular session of the Montgomery County Board of County Commissioners on June 16th at 6:00 p.m. Let's observe just a moment of silence. We're not asking our pastors to come out with the coronavirus and the stay-at-home orders and so forth, so let's observe just a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And I'll ask Mr. Neuter if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
It would be my honor. If you are able, please rise and join us in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, you have your agenda in front of you there. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Henson to approve, a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Matheny. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the approval of the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The agenda is approved. I don't have any names up here, but is there anyone here that's going to speak in the public forum? Do you want to make?
Chairman, we do have 6 public hearings tonight, so somebody y'all that may be here to speak about the budget hearings or the 2 variances, and there'll be a separate opportunity at those hearings to speak. But if no one's here to speak at the general public forum, then I'll forego the policy and procedure.
Okay. Our next order of business, I believe the county manager has a couple of presentations to make.
Chairman, Commissioners, that's right. The first presentation scheduled was for the Sandhills Mental Health Center, Victoria Witt, who joins us each year at the budget time to talk about our partnership with Sandhills and the mental health services they provide. Their partnership with Department of Human Social Services, their partnership with the sheriff and the jail and telehealth down there, and with the school system. Due to the COVID-19 concerns and the outbreak, Victoria and her staff, we asked them to not join us tonight, and they were certainly okay with that, but she sent her budget package that is in your packets tonight. The board, of course, later on in this meeting will be adopting a continuing budget instead of an official budget for FY21 with all the uncertainties facing us up ahead. The board has made the decision to just do a continuing budget to get us into the fall until we get a better picture of our revenues. When you do adopt that formal budget, the request from Sandhills Mental Health is the same level of funding that was appropriated this year and the same amount that's been appropriated for the last several years. In her materials that she provided, which is available to the public on our website, www.montgomerycountync.com, you will see all the services that Sandhills Center provides to Montgomery County. Chairman Robinson is on that board, so she can speak to the many things that they do, and of course I'm involved in that as well, but I know the board is familiar with Victoria and everything she's doing for the county.
And I think this is the 16th year, and they have not requested an increase in their budget in the past 16 years. So their budget, the request that they're making is still the same that we've had. If there's not any questions about the
Sandhills Center, then I will move to the second presentation, which is the Montgomery County Humane Society. What we're asking the board tonight is to approve a new partnership agreement with the Montgomery County Humane Society, and that partnership includes a commitment of funds for the Spay Neuter program in the amount of $25,000, and also to upgrade the part-time office position that Animal Control has had into the past into a full-time position once you adopt a full budget later this fall. And so the position will not come full-time until that new budget is passed. Part of that person's responsibility will be to file for reimbursement for the Spay Neuter program. The state has a fund funded in part by the license plates that will reimburse counties for all the costs associated with spay and neuter when pets are adopted or those procedures are done for low-income families. As part of our agreement that we're asking the board to adopt, that we're setting lower adoption fees for low-income families, and so they can enjoy pet ownership and also make sure those animals are spayed and neutered. The agreement with the Humane Society is in your packet, and I'll be glad to answer any questions about operational procedures. I think it's laid out pretty straightforward as to what the Humane Society and their volunteers are bringing to this agreement and what the county is going to step up and do. Steve Hare, President of the Humane Society, and Sally Morris are here in the room, and I'll allow them to come up to speak. But if I may, I know the board feels the same as I do, that we owe a great indebtedness to Steve, Sally, Doughton in the past, and all the volunteers of the Humane Society. The county formed a partnership 6 years ago, and gosh, time flies. It just seems like a year at the most, but it was 6 years ago that we formed that partnership with the Humane Society, and mostly funded through their donations. The facility that is out there now was constructed. And so 2/3 of the funding for that facility was donations to the Humane Society. That building was built, and the Humane Society deeded it over to the county for the perpetual care of that facility. And so that shows that the open-handedness of this relationship, of the trust that we have built over the years. And when we laid that facility out, it was envisioned that this time, 6 years later, that we were hoping to accomplish 500 adoptions. Well, thanks to the work of Steve and Sally and the volunteers, and not to mention Leon Everett and our staff, they have realized over 1,200 adoptions of animals in those 6 years. And so they have done a tremendous job to improve the condition of animals in Montgomery County. The board remembers that at one time Montgomery County had the highest euthanasia rate in the state. And so the work they've done and the efforts they put in is truly remarkable. Further partnership with us, the state department, North Carolina Department of Agriculture, who inspects shelters, the county facility that we were operating animal control out of, the state came in and made us demolish that facility as non-compliant. And so we had to do that last year. And Sally, Steve, and the Humane Society willingly opened up the fence on their side to allow us to come in and share space with them. And that was no small undertaking. Not only the large number of animals that we bring in, but we do have to do some animal control type functions. And so I can only speak good things to the partnership that has existed. This agreement, this new building that we're getting ready to open in the next, hopefully, 60 days. We're waiting on the kennels to come in. The new kennels, they're plumbed, so the waste from the animal is pumped right into the septic system. So there's a lot less manual cleaning. It has a sleeping shelf in it. We're very excited about the new climate-controlled indoor adoption facility that we're having. And so as we take it to that next level, like we did 6 years ago with the first building, we're asking for the board's approval to cement this, and so it keeps going past all of us, and for the welfare of the animals and for the good of Montgomery County. And so I'll be glad to answer any questions about the agreement But if I can, I would ask Steve to come up and just say a few words to the board. But again, it has been a wonderful partnership, and I'm excited about the new adoption facility. I've put 2 items on the board's agenda. One is the adoption of this agreement and commitment to work towards that in the new budget. And the second item is the naming of the facility as the Doubtton and Sally Morris Adoption Center, Montgomery County Humane Society. And that was something that Ms. Morris did not want. But I think I can speak for everybody in this room, that's something we want. So Steve, thank you for all you've done, and I will step aside and let you speak.
Thank you, Matthew Woodard. Matthew has been very good to the Humane Society over the last 5 years. Everything he said he would do, he did. The county commissioners, we can't thank you enough. We praise you to the highest, and we hope that this thing can happen tonight, and we can move on and grow and take care of the animals of the county, keep people out of here that we don't want fussing at us. Over these last 5 years, we've never failed an inspection with the Humane Society. There's a lady that comes randomly, Elizabeth, and she always gives us a good grade. We try to do good business out there. There has been some growing pains with the county and Humane Society, but we always seem to find a way to work those over and keep on moving. In the last 5 years since we've been over there, he said over 1,200. It's actually 1,157 cats and dogs, and 8 ducks, 1 rooster, and 1 pig that we have adopted out. We've returned 69 animals back to their families for a total of 1,157. Total to today is 165, and hopefully we can double that between now and the end of the year. It all depends on the animals. Again, would like to thank you. There will be growing pains. You'll have things you'll hear, but just know we'll always be working for the betterment of the county and of the animals, and try to keep a good face on it, besides this one. Any questions?
Well, thank you and your board and your volunteers for what you've done over the past several years for the animals, and that you continue to do.
Okay. We do thank you guys, and if we can do anything, if you hear anything, give us a call. We're glad to do whatever. I do have something I'd like to give you, if that's okay. Can I approach?
Yes. You don't have a puppy in there, do you?
No, but I thought about it.
Got a milk bone.
Sally, over during the COVID virus times, Sally's made close to 2,000 of these masks, and she gives them away freely, and through volunteers with the elastic.
Thank you.
Just a little token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
There's my puppy.
Thank you,
And
sir.
a mask.
Sally has been very busy. Her fingers are pretty knotted. And I think we got more back here. Everybody in the room can have some.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, if I may, the press would like to get a picture of the Sally's mask here, and to honor this moment of moving forward. I know we're trying to social distance, but if it would be possible for us to come down and get a picture. And I will ask Leon Everett to come up too. Leon tries to stay in the background, but there's not a more dedicated employee of this county than Leon Everett. And Leon, if you'll come forward, I know that
I will say amen to that.
We asked Leon at times to put up with the political aspect of things, and he always does so with a big smile and a willingness to help. So Leon, my friend, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for making this possible. Without you, it wouldn't have happened. Sally, Steve, y'all take front and center. Leon and I will slide over here on the side.
Hey, man, I can't see it.
Leon, you know I can't
see you right there. You might as well
That was
come
his
over
plan.
there.
She can see you.
Harvey, I can
You
see
go
you
beside
right
me.
there.
There we go. You'll never know I got one on.
Up there beside Harvey, as close as you feel safe doing. And Matthew, if you'll slide, there you go. All right. All right, everybody. I'd say smile, but it wouldn't matter, would it? Mike, if you will take a half step toward Matthew. There you go. And one more. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Come and sit.
Yes, ma'am.
So Chairman, the first motion would be to accept the terms of the agreement between the county and the Humane Society for the new indoor adoption facility.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Crisco to accept, to adopt that partnership agreement. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Go ahead, Harvey.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Any questions, discussion?
I'd just like to comment, Madam Chairman, that, and again, thank Sally and Steve and all the members of the Humane Society for the great progress that has been made in caring for our animals, stray animals. Of course, Leon is certainly a treasure to this county. This was one of the key hot buttons when I first became a commissioner almost 12 years ago, to build an animal shelter. At that time, we were estimating it would have cost about $1 million. And of course, we didn't have the money, and all of those problems have been overcome in large measure, and thanks to Sally working with the county, and Matthew in particular, to solve that and make a better outcome for those animals that are picked up as strays. So thank you, Sally.
Any other comments or discussion? Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And the second motion is to name the facility Dalton and Sally Morris Adoption Center, Montgomery County Humane Society. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion too.
Motion made by Commissioner Crisco. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Henson. Any questions or discussion about that? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion passed.
Challenge Steve, thank you. We look forward to our groundbreaking or our official door opening. We've got the building's already erected, so once we get the kennels, we'll have a official ribbon cutting, I guess, to move in the front door.
Thank you. The next order of business is our consent agenda. Hope everyone's had a chance to look over the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion. Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Henson to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Any discussion or questions? If not, then everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Consent agenda approved. Now we move into our public hearings. Mr. Woodard?
Chairman, Commissioners, again, we have 6 public hearings tonight. The first 2 are variances, and so I'll ask the Planning Director, Andrew, to come up to lead us through this. Variances are governed overall by North Carolina general statutes, and there are 4 conditions that the applicant must meet, all 4, in order for the board to grant that variance. And so, Andrew, I will turn it over to you and let you walk the board through this variance application and those 4 conditions.
Good evening. It's been a little bit since I've been up here. Well, since anybody has, I guess. As he said, we do have 2 variance requests tonight on the agenda. The first one we'll review is VR 02-2020. Mr. Dean Whitmore is requesting a 20-foot rear yard setback variance in order to construct a single-family home. The property is located at 714 Green Gap Shores in Troy, North Carolina 27371. Parcel identification number is 658900561496. The property is further described by Plat F-183D and Deed Book 815, page 924, registered with the Register of Deeds. The property is currently zoned as Residential 2. All surrounding properties are zoned as R2 as well. Surrounding land uses include single-family residences and the Uwharrie National Forest to the rear of the parcel. The parcel is currently vacant with a very steep driveway leading to the top. As the county manager said, Article 6, Section 3.2 of the zoning ordinance does establish 4 findings of fact that must be made before the governing board can approve of a variance request. Those 4 findings are also mirrored by the state statutes. They follow the minimum requirements. The applicant's situation must meet all 4 conditions. The staff report included in the agenda packet details of the conditions. A copy of that report is available on the county website for public review. The applicant statements, when I say applicant states, taken from the application included in the agenda packet. The conditions are, number 1, that unnecessary hardship would result in a strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. The applicant states that the community rules will not permit mobile homes or park models, and no other options will work. The zoning district for the property, Residential 2, does permit double-wide manufactured dwellings. It would not permit single-wides or park models. It is unclear if private covenants for Green Gap Shores exist. If they do, it's not the county's responsibility to enforce those. The proposed home is roughly the size of a double-wide manufactured home, and the site is the only area suitable for a home without extreme unnecessary grading of the property. The hardship, item 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as the location, size, or topography, hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions common to the neighborhood or general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance. The applicant states that the property is on a steep hillside and it is not possible to cut the hill down enough to get a large flat enough spot to build a home, except at the top where it adjoined National Forest property. The pictures demonstrate the steepness of the parcel. It's very steep and building sites are very limited on the property. The driveway does feature 3 tight switchbacks to reach the top. As you can see in one of the pictures, I had to park at the bottom. I was unable to drive the county vehicle past the first switchback of the property. The vehicle just wouldn't make it up there. It's a front-wheel drive vehicle. The topography of the lot is not common in Green Gap. Most of the lots are very flat. When it gets steep over here, the other properties nearby that have kind of similar topography already have structures built, and most of those predate the ordinance or are built in the setback as it is. Item 3, the hardship did not result from the actions taken by the applicant or property owner. The act of purchasing the property with the knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. The applicant states, no, when we looked at the property, we initially thought there would be enough room, but after clearing the area, it became evident that there wasn't. The topography, of course, is a natural feature not controllable by the applicant and does not result from their actions. They've done what they can to make the lot buildable with that limited area. And item 4, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that the general public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The applicant states yes. The intent of the 20-foot setback is essentially to ensure adequate space is given for rear yards and to prevent any construction from significantly impacting property owners to the rear of the subject parcel. The proposal is a 20-foot setback variance, but the only structure proposed to extend on to the property line is a small landing with stairs. In this case, the property owner to the rear of the parcel is the National Forest Service. That area will be perpetually forested property with no development. The Forest Service was notified of the request by email, and then per law, they were notified by mailed notice. As of just moments ago, I checked my email, and I have no comment from them at this time. This variance request will not serve to change any zoning designation and will in no way permit a use not permitted in the residential 2 district. I'm available to answer any questions the board might have on this request.
Any questions of Mr. Gahagan?
The applicant is in attendance too, so.
Mr. Whitmore, would you like to address the board?
Not unless you guys have a question.
Anybody have any questions of the applicant? What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman, I think at this time it would be appropriate to do the public comment period.
Oh, do we have anyone here from the public who'd like to speak?
If not, we'll go to the rules and procedures of the public comment period.
Okay, I don't hear from anyone.
Do we need to address each of the conditions behind this?
That would be best, just discuss the, merits of each one for the record, yes. I can read those out and we can step through them. The conditions include item 1, unnecessary hardship would result in the strict application of the ordinance.
Madam Chair, I find that condition has been met in view of the peculiar situation where the property is located.
Item 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as the location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions common to the neighborhood or general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance.
I see where the specific request originally said a 5-foot setback from the National Forest line, and then it was amended to 0. Is there a way we could change that to where it would be a 2-foot setback? Almost an 18-foot variance to the set. An 18-foot variance is more appropriate and I guess you could say equitable to the community, so it's not building right on the National Forest line. Instead of a 0-foot setback, you could give them 2 or 3 feet to where it'd be a 17-foot setback or even an 18-foot setback. It's up to the.
Chairman, if I may, the board certainly has that latitude. If, as long as all 4 conditions are met, that it would be an undue hardship not to grant the variance, and it was not due to any personal preference. And I think Andrew has spoken to the topography on this lot is atypical to what exists on Green Gap. And I think he also mentioned that the ones that were on similar lots were built in the setback before we had setbacks. And so, to Commissioner Henson's request that, you want the variance to be the minimal footprint that it can be, the minimal excursion into that setback area. So I think the Commissioner's comment was in the public interest not to build on the property line. The board may mitigate the request of the applicant on the length of the setback or the encroachment on that.
Well, if we're going to address that, I'd like to hear from the applicant what his opinion is, what that would involve for him.
Mr. Whitmore, if you would come forward, sir, and state your name and address for the record, I think the board wants to hear about your building footprint and why you feel the setback needs to go all the way to the property line. So
My home address presently, 'cause this is the second home.
wherever you're building.
I live in 10712A Kimberly Lane in Norwood, and I'm building a second home actually up there on the lake. And the reason I wanted to get as far back as I could, like the gentleman mentioned earlier, the home is really not any wider than what a modular would be now, without the porches. My front porch is already gonna be hanging over the cliff like that. I gotta support it. And so the only thing I wanted behind the house, and that's with me putting it about 5 foot off the line. And the only thing I wanted to put behind the house was it's got a back door. We would have put a little small step up and landing so we can go in and out of the house on the back side, because that's where the utility ring is. So it would put me, I'll probably wind up being about a foot off the line, but I was wanting to get down to zero clearance if I could.
Yeah.
It's actually, I don't know if you can tell by the pictures, if you'll wait on it, you'll see, it's coming up. Yeah, that's to the left there. You see the lighter colored rock? That's where the house location would be, and you see how I'd be up against that bank.
Yeah.
So I really won't be able to get on their property. I'm gonna be close to the bank. And
If you'll go back, I think the picture is referenced, and is there not a property stake in that picture of where the line is?
could be.
Yeah, they'll blow that picture up, right? Move your mouse over right there. Is that not?
Now, see, when it comes, as the line goes that way, I've got a little more property before you get to the national forest. But you see, that's like, that bank down there is like 10 foot high. And right here, at the front, it's like 3 foot high. And I'm actually right on the line there. And also, not a lot of property perks up there. So I had to buy straight forward about 4 lots over before I finally found a place to perk. And it's downhill from that location down to my drain field. It won't run, if I go much slower, it wouldn't run uphill. And I couldn't even cut it down any more than that, because the more I cut it down, maybe the more space that would give me, you know. But I'm in danger of not having fall to the septic system. So I wanted to have a natural drain septic system in there, which I do have now. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Leonard, you want to give us the second question?
Any more discussion on that item, or I would proceed to item 3? Item,
We didn't have a finding on item 2, did we?
I don't believe so, not at this point.
So just to restate that, Andrew, item 2 was, the property is peculiar to the neighborhood, and it's not,
Preference.
you'll read that statement.
Hardship results from conditions peculiar to the property, such as size, location, or topography.
Madam Chair, I would suggest that we find that item 2 has been met, the requirements.
Item 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner.
I think that's been met.
And item 4, the requested variance is consistent with spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved.
Is Madam Chair, again, I would think that that condition has been met.
So it appears that all 4 conditions have been met. Based on the review that we just had.
Yeah, board feels that all 4 conditions have been met. The motion would be to adopt VR 02-2020 with the 20-foot variance in the rear to allow a person to build up to the property line unless that's wants to be mitigated.
I move to approve the variance as requested.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the variance. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
My thoughts on a lot of that, he paid for all the land, he ought to be able to use all of it. The setbacks are kind of crazy. I can't use that much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the second public hearing is another variance request, DR 01-2020. I believe Andrew had provided the pictures, which the clerk will put up on the viewing screen, but Andrew, I'll let you, ask you to go ahead and provide the staff report.
And I just want to clarify, since there was one day on the previous hearing, the variance requests do require a supermajority of the board, so it does take 4 votes to approve. 1 to 3 will not grant approval for a variance. The only zoning-related item that does require a supermajority still, that hasn't changed. So we'll move on to the second variance request, VR 02-2020. I'm sorry, wrong notes. VR 01-2020. Ms. Carter-Worthy is requesting 2 variances, a 2-foot 10-inch front yard setback variance in order to add a new cover over a proposed front door, and a 10-foot rear yard setback variance to enlarge and cover an existing rear deck. The 2-foot 10-inch front yard variance will be referred to as Variance 1. The 10-foot rear yard request will be referred to as Variance 2. The property is located at 620 Pine Haven Drive, New London, NC 28127. The parcel identification numbers are 6673-0905-1825 and 6673-0905-1900. These 2 parcels have been recombined per Plat G97A and Deed Book 843, page 126. The parcel number to Lot 69, which is 6673-0905-1900, will be assigned to this lot, and the tax map is updated to reflect the finished recombination. As before, the property is currently zoned as residential 2. All surrounding properties are zoned as R2. Surrounding land uses include single-family residences in Baden Lake. The parcel currently features a legal non-conforming single-family home and accessory structures. Article 6, Section 3.2 of the zoning ordinance does establish 4 findings of fact that must be made before the governing board can approve of a variance request. As before, the state statutes follow suit. The applicant's situation must meet all 4 conditions. The staff report included in the agenda packet details the conditions. A copy of that report is available on the county website for public review. Applicant statements have been taken from the application. Because the statements were quite lengthy, for the purposes of this presentation, the statements have been paraphrased. The applicant, I believe, is in attendance, so she can also fill in if I missed anything. The conditions are: item 1, unnecessary hardship would result in the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. On variance 1, which is the 2-foot 10-inch front yard variance, The main structure, this is the applicant's statement, the main structure was built over 60 years ago without a front door and before setbacks were enacted. The irregular shape of the land and steep topography from the west side make it infeasible to add a front door from the western side. The pictures show that the home does appear to have existing front access. As demonstrated in site photographs, it would be to the left of the existing garage. The proposed front door may potentially be inset as the current garage door is, which is also demonstrated in some of the pictures. That would create an overhang of at least 1 foot for that door without expanding the footprint. The shape and the topography of this lot are not uncommon to the neighborhood. The topography is fairly common to lakefront property throughout the county. Variance 2, the applicant statement. Applicant wishes to repair and improve the functionality and appearance of the property by replacing an irregularly shaped rear deck. The open deck does not provide sun protection or insect protection in summer evenings. The roof line of a covered porch cannot be reasonably achieved by adhering to the current irregular deck footprint. Many properties do feature uncovered rear decks, and the existing deck could be covered as it stands now without any encroachment into the rear setback beyond the existing footprint of the deck. The zoning code in this case does permit the deck to be rebuilt, remodeled, or repaired within the same footprint. Lakefront properties do enjoy a benefit where they may be rebuilt, remodeled, or reconstructed within the same footprint, even if they already violate the current setbacks. Unfortunately, insect or sun protection is not a viable basis for a variance request. Those are personal hardships, not hardships to the land or unique to the property. They are common to really everywhere. There does not appear to be any readily apparent hardship that requires either variance in this situation. Item 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as the location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance. The applicant states that the irregular shape of the land and steep topography make it infeasible to add a front door to the east or west side. The current garage door is the only feasible location to add front entry. As stated previously, the home does appear to have existing front access. The existing garage, again, is inset and may be converted to a new front door as it stands without the expansion of the footprint. The lot features a typical slope found on lakefront properties. The topography is not exclusive to this parcel. It's fairly common throughout Pine Haven and many of the other lakefront communities that we have. On the front side, the road right-of-way is not unique in this location. It's a standard road right-of-way throughout Pine Haven and throughout the rest of the county in that area. It's of standard size and would affect all property equally in this neighborhood. Variance 2, the rear deck. The applicant states the steep lot requires many steps in order to connect the main level of the house to the ground, and the rear lot line cuts at a sharp diagonal. As previously stated, topography is not unique to this property and is again common for the lakefront parcels. The steep cut of the rear lot line appears to occur beyond the existing deck. There are many instances in Pine Haven and other lakefront communities that feature similar rear lot lines. Both hardships do appear to be related to personal circumstances and desires, or include issues common to the neighborhood or general public. Item 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner. The act of purchasing the property with the knowledge that the circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. The applicant speaks to both variance requests. The applicant states that the family has owned and paid taxes on the property for over 60 years. The development of house and lot precede the current zoning ordinance. This area of Pine Haven Village was created on October 31st, 1951 from a recorded plat. It appears the property was inherited through a trust, and the property owners and their family have owned the home for many years, basically since it was constructed. The tax card does indicate the home was constructed in 1950, well before any zoning code existed in that area, or at least the current code. Any hardship that may exist, if there is one, was not due to the actions of the applicant or property owner. And item 4, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that the general public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Speaking to both variances, the applicant states that the spirit of the ordinance is to create uniform setbacks that maintain adequate separations between a house and its neighbors and the public street, or in this case, a public water body, while at the same time allowing pre-existing encroachments to remain. Both of the proposed variances have very minimal impacts to the neighbors and public at large. There is no impact to public safety, and substantial justice is achieved in that a 60-plus-year-old Montgomery County tax-paying family may modernize and improve its property. As I've stated previously, I'm not able to find any hardships that may require variance in this instance. The existing rear deck is well beyond what could be considered a standard-sized rear deck. It has many different pieces to it, and while it is of unique construction, that does not preclude reconstruction within the same footprint. The type of construction or the design of the structure is not considered a hardship. On the front cover over the proposed door, that cover would not be required by any building code and does not appear to have any notable hardship. The road right-of-way in this area is similar throughout the Pine Haven Village and throughout most of the county. The requests appear to be at odds with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that they are primarily for owner convenience and do not appear to have any notable unique hardship to the property. The variance request will not serve to change any zoning designation and will in no way permit a use not permitted in the residential 2 district. As before, I'm available to answer any questions that the board might have on this particular request.
Thank you, Mr. Gayhager. Would either of you like to speak?
If you will, please enter your name and address. To the microphone, just state your name and address.
Sure. My name is Tom Hester. My address is 2300 White Oak Road in Raleigh, North Carolina, 27608. This is my wife, Carter Worthy, and she's at the same address. I'm gonna start out and just tell you a little bit of background about the property. And then Carter is gonna address more of the details, looking at each of the 4 points for the requirement. Again, my name is Tom Hester. My wife Carter and I own the property, and we are the applicants in this matter. Again, just a little brief background. I'll try to be brief. My parents first bought a lot in Pine Haven Village with my mother's sister and her family when the neighborhood was originally developed in the early 1950s. My parents bought this property that we're talking about on the lake in 1959. At that time, the house was just a little cinder block cabin with an attached boat garage. My parents owned a business in Greensboro, and my family spent every weekend at the lake for 9 or 10 months out of the year. We would arrive after dark on Friday and leave there at dark on Sunday. The lake was a gathering place for our family, aunts and uncles and cousins, and for many family friends of all ages who would come for the day or come for the weekend. My mother was always involved in the community there. She served on the community association. She was one of the founders of the Worship Center in Pine Haven, served as its superintendent for several years, and always supported the facility and the Sunday school. She was always a supporter of the Pine Lake Fire Department. Over the years, the house grew. The shape and dimensions of the house on the roadside did not change, but on the lakeside, first a screen porch was added, and in the 1970s, the screen porch area was converted to the kitchen and living areas, and a patio and deck were added on the lakeside. The deck was replaced in the mid-1990s. The property also has a pier and a boathouse and a couple of retaining walls that are inside the lake property itself that we are able to maintain by license with Cube Hydro, who runs the lake. When my mother passed away in 2016, we were able to keep the house in the family. The lake house still serves as a gathering place for the family and friends. My children love Baden Lake and enjoy bringing their friends. My sister's grandchildren and the grandchildren of my cousins represent the fourth generation in my family who love the lake and look forward to the family reunions that go on there every summer. So I am not telling you these things because they have any specific bearing on the hearing tonight or on the request for the variance. But I did want you to know that even though the property is way in the far corner of the county, and even though we don't live there year-round, we are part of the community. We've been part of the community, and we've been taxpayers in the community for over 65 years. Over the years, we have tried to maintain and improve the property. That's what my mother did, and that is what we are trying to do. This project that we are proposing for the property is an effort to make the house more livable and enjoyable for family, friends, and hopefully for the next generation and the generation after that. Now, Carter is now going to address the specific points and the details about the project itself.
Thank you. So thank you all for letting us have a chance to speak. I wish ours was going to be as quick as the one before, but unfortunately we have a little bit more that we probably need to enter into the record and try to convince you that we, should get this variance. We know that you have other things you could be doing with your time, and we appreciate your service for being here, and like you always are every month. So thank you for that. The UNC School of Government describes the Board of Adjustment variance process as a safety valve in zoning that allows adjustment of the rules to fit individual, unanticipated situations. So it's a way for you to provide relief to us when there's an odd situation or an unintended consequence that would result from the strict interpretation of the ordinance. What we are requesting is two very small adjustments that will allow us to improve our 70-year-old property to address two of these unanticipated situations without going against the spirit or the intent of the ordinance. We have spent a lot of time and a lot of money already preparing the application and describing the unusual circumstances that justify these modest variances. So our hope was to briefly cover the key points and then to answer any questions you might have. However, over the weekend, we got a chance to read the staff report. And suffice it to say, we were very discouraged that Mr. Gahagan, the chief zoning officer, has taken such a hard line against our request. I will say he's been extremely responsive. He and I have corresponded dozens of times over the last 4 months while we've been trying to get to this point of this hearing. And he's obviously a very competent planner, and he's been courteous in every way to us. But we were especially disappointed when we reviewed his response to the earlier case. So we read the earlier case, his staff report to that while we were reviewing, and you just approved that case. Our requests are smaller in scope than the Whitmore's requested relief. And yet the same arguments that Mr. Gahagan used to support their case, he used to oppose our case. And this feels inconsistent to us. So now we feel we must fully present our factual evidence to enter it into the record, refute the statements he made that we think are either incorrect or that we just disagree with. So, there's certainly room for people to disagree. So we disagree with some of the things that he said, and we'd like you to know what those are. Tom and I both work extensively with municipal staff in our town, in our jobs, and we understand that you are likely to support your staff's position. We get that. But we hope that you'll listen with an open mind to our case and consider the actual provable facts that we're going to present to justify our request. So, summary of the cases.
First, I'd like to give you a brief description of what we're trying to do. I hope you'll bear with me as I refer to various pages in your packet. And does everybody have their packet sort of turned to our case? Okay, thank you. As I'm going to try to move quickly, I know the time is of the essence.
Can I just ask you?
Yes.
Now, where does this fit in?
That is also shown on page 114 of your packet, but it's our setback study, and it's really the critical piece of the whole conversation. So if you've got that piece, I've actually made extra copies, but if you've got the big blow-up of that piece right there, that's the thing to hold in front of you while we talk, because I think that'll be the most helpful to understand.
There's nothing new here, it's the same as what's in the application.
Correct. I've got some new things to enter into the record, but that, yes. So everybody's got that large-scale setback study, correct? Okay. Okay, so as Tom pointed out, the house has been built over a period of years and has never had a proper front door. We would like to add an awning overhang over the garage door and convert the garage into a front entry foyer. If you look at that setback study that Mr. Matheny just referenced, you will see the thin dark blue line on the right side of the setback study at the end of the driveway. This is the 1 foot area of encroachment we are requesting. Does everybody see that one little strip right at the end of the driveway? It will be attached to existing construction and will not increase the amount of impervious surface because there's an existing driveway under that overhang. So there's not going to be any impact in terms of the impervious surface. Okay, the second variance is for the corner of the new covered porch on the lakeside. Please refer to the photo on page 115 of your packet to see that the house has a and of course you've seen the slides that Mr. Gahagan presented too. Crazy shaped, multi-level deck, which is old and in need of replacement. It really goes all over the place, and you can see on that setback study the outline of the existing deck. We want to replace it with a covered porch. The deck and the patio, okay, so there's the deck. That's up on the floor level of the house. And then the deck goes down and has several different little pieces and appendages that are at different levels. And then at the lower level, there's a boathouse and there's a sun deck on top of it. So a solid concrete sun deck on top of the boathouse that covers this whole area that we're talking about. So my first interpretation I was hoping he would make is, well, you already have an encroachment there. That boathouse and sun deck are there. So that's your footprint. As long as you stay in the footprint, you're okay. But he said no. He said you got to stay in the footprint of the deck itself to comply. So one small corner of the new covered porch is outside the current deck footprint. Okay, so if you're looking at the drawing now, this is really the heart and soul of our case, is that the little navy blue, dark blue corner, and I'm just for frame of reference, I'm going to tell you, it's about the size of this table right here. This is the amount of area that we're talking about that we're asking for relief on. About the size of this table is that dark blue, it's not really a triangle, but it's an odd-shaped piece, and that would allow us to do a rectangular deck and comply in every other way with your ordinance. And again, it will hang over an existing encroachment that's still going to be there, the boathouse and those steps, those concrete steps that are there. So that's really what we're trying to do. Let's see. If you look again at the setback study, you can see on the, the green L-shaped area of encroachment is currently existing and will be abandoned when we do if we get a chance to do this project, we'll get rid of that. And so there'll be actually a net reduction in the encroachment area of about 60 square feet. We think that is also a critical piece of our case, is we are asking for an encroachment, but we really are just asking for you to adjust the encroachment that we already have, and in the bottom line will be a net reduction in the encroachment that we have now. Okay, so findings of fact. In order to approve our request, you must conclude we meet all 4 conditions, as he has explained. He agreed that we met number 3, so we don't need to address that. We already are in agreement on that. And so I'm going to go through the other 3. First is unnecessary hardship, and this is really where I think he and we disagree, is whether or not there's a hardship. He has said repeatedly in his staff report that our request is completely for our desire and our convenience, and it has nothing to do with the characteristics of the property, and we disagree with that. Okay, so unnecessary hardship is a subjective measurement, and it's what you are asked to make, this judgment about this subjective measurement. But it does require that the hardship must be substantial, peculiar to the property, and not self-created. So, unnecessary hardship about the front door. What is the unnecessary hardship? Well, not having a proper front door is a hardship because you have to walk through 2 bedrooms and a long hallway to get to the living area. And I brought a few extra pieces of information that I want to share with you. The first page of this packet shows the layout inside the house, and Mr. Gahan couldn't have known this. He saw the sliding door there beside the garage, and he said, well, there's a front door, and he said there's a doorbell there, so clearly, you know, that must be the front door that you use. But in fact, it's a sliding glass door that goes to a bedroom, and then that bedroom goes through another bedroom, and then you go through a long hall, and then you get to the living area. So it's not a functional front entry. That was just incorrect. Okay, so the hardship is unnecessary because it can be remedied by converting the garage to the entry foyer. Our architect's professional opinion is that for weather protection and design appropriateness, a shallow overhang is recommended. Please refer to page 2 of the packet we just handed out. That's a letter from her that's been notarized. And she makes this statement. They would need an additional 1 foot in order to build the needed doorway protection. As such, and you know, if you read her statement too, you see a little bit further after she says that, she talks about mold and the deterioration of the door, and we've had a situation very similar recently where our door rotted and then our threshold rotted, and when we went to repair it, we actually had to reframe underneath the doorway. So we know that this is a serious situation. As such, we disagree with the staff assessment of what appears to be a front door, and we dispute that 1 foot is sufficient overhang for protection based on the expert opinion of the architect. So that's our case for the unnecessary hardship of the front door.
So to be clear, you're going to eliminate the garage and make that an entry hall?
Yes, sir. Okay, so the unnecessary hardship regarding the porch corner. Okay, and again, the request is asking for a 10-foot variance because it's a 10-foot rear setback, but we're really just talking about in a 1 point on the whole lot. So it's not like the previous case where for 50 feet across the back of their house, you're given 20-foot variance. This is where we already have an encroachment. We're asking for 1 or 2 feet in a very small point. Okay, so the unnecessary hardship on the porch corner is that the rear property line is peculiar and irregular, which is exactly what the standards are. If you've got a lot that's peculiar and irregular. The staff report shows that the tax map as the lot configuration on page 119 of the packet. So if you look at that, you'll see your tax map. It shows it being kind of a rectangle. When you put our 2 lots together, it looks like a rectangle. It doesn't look that irregular. But if you look at our survey, which is attached on page 118, you see that actually the lot is a triangle, which that's kind of key to our position that it's an irregular lot. It definitively shows that the lot is actually triangular in shape. Staff report also says that the steep cut of the cove shoreline is a common feature in similar lakeside lots. However, you will see on the 3rd page of the evidence package that the Google map clearly shows that the steep cut beside our lot is unusual and uncommon in our area. There are 50 houses on that map. We're the only one that has that situation. So I call that uncommon and unusual impact on our property. The staff report also says that the existing deck could be covered with a roof as it stands. Well, I want you to try to envision that. You've seen the picture of the deck and how it sits. How would you put a roof in with a sawtooth edge on it? How would the walls, I mean, it's not a doable thing to put a roof on that in its current configuration. So if you look back at the setback study, you see the very jagged edge of the existing footprint of the deck. It's hard to imagine a roof line that could be constructed to cover such an irregularly shaped footprint. And importantly, straightening out the footprint, which is what we're asking to do, straightening it out, it results in a smaller encroachment overall. Let me say it again, straightening out the footprint as we're proposing results in a smaller encroachment than currently exists. In fact, the total square footage in the requested porch variance is 15 square feet, or about the size of an average desktop, and most of that is in the overhang. So only about 4 square feet of it is actually in the porch itself, and that's what you need to have the post to set the roof on top of. So that I'm just trying to make the point that we have minimized this as much as we possibly can to get what we're trying to do done. Okay, so that's the end of my defense of our unnecessary hardship argument. The next is conditions that are peculiar to the property. So about the front door. This old cabin was built before the ordinance and it had no front door. That's unique. Very peculiar to me to walk through 2 bedrooms and a hallway to get to the living room unless you have the garage door opener. If one person has that and they go through the garage and everybody else has to wander through the house. The staff report again says it appears to have adequate front entry by way of the sliding door, and that's just not, doesn't take into consideration how the layout is. The report rightly says that a new door could be added at the garage location without the overhang. That's true, but our professional architect recommends the overhang. And if you look at the upper right photo on page 115 of your packet, and you'll just see, and you've seen on this video screen, how plain that side of the house looks. It's just that square opening where the garage door opens. And then compare it to the design in the lower right-hand corner of page 117. It's a little small snapshot of what the elevation of that would look like with this overhang. And I hope you'll agree that this improvement would be more functional. It would look a lot better. It would improve the overall neighborhood appearance. We own the lots across the street from our house, and we obviously think this improvement would have a positive impact on those property values. Our longtime neighbors agree. Please refer to the notarized letters in the evidence package indicating that our neighbors support our project. And just to be clear, we're asking for 1 additional foot, 1 more than we have now, and it is all in 100% in overhang, so no impact to the street whatsoever. Okay, so moving on. Condition number 2, peculiar conditions, and this is about the porch corner. Contrary to the staff report, the lot is fairly steep. You can see that in the photographs on page 115 and 125. It falls 15 to 20 feet across the site, which is less than a 1/4 acre, even after it's been combined. But the topo is not the worst problem. It is the irregular coastline of the lake. As described earlier, the staff report shows a rectangular lot, but the survey revealed a triangular lot, and the Google map shows that the cove cut is unusual and not typical. It is this irregular configuration that causes our hardship. This is exactly the type of situation a variance is designed to address. So, for the zoning inspector to say that this physical land feature is due to personal circumstances and desires is frustrating, to say the least. In our view, he is making a subjective judgment about our motives, and we are providing you with hard facts that indicate otherwise, and that's what we hope you'll find. In the previous case, he took the opposite position, saying that the peculiar land feature is a natural feature, not controllable by the applicant, does not result from their actions. True of our case. And the applicant made considerable good faith efforts toward finding alternatives and exhausted all other options. True in our case. He went on to say the proposed home is a standard dwelling size and will feature a front porch that must extend over a significant drop in order to fit. True in our case. Our situation is almost identical, except that our porch is smaller, and it's on the rear instead of the front. And we are trying to adapt an existing building that was constructed prior to the setbacks, whereas the other property owner was creating a new building on over an acre and was granted 100% relief from the rear setback. So that's hard for us to understand, how he could have this different opinion. Okay, condition number 4, is it consistent with the spirit and intent of the ordinance? Is public safety secured? Is justice achieved? In response to condition number 4, the staff report repeats their disagreement with us on the condition number 1, which is whether the hardship exists. And he then includes that our requests are completely at odds with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. Completely. That's what he said. This seems harsh, given the request is only asking for 1 additional foot on the front overhang and a total of 14 square feet, if you look at it in square footage on the street side, and a small corner projection of 15 square feet on the porch corner, the size of that table. We believe our requests are modest, reasonable, necessary, and they address the 2 problems we face. And more to the point of condition number 4, our requests are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, and that granting of this relief will actually reduce our current degree of encroachment overall. We are offsetting the new encroachment area by eliminating 3 times as much encroachment as we are requesting. As to the porch encroachment, please remember that 100% of the requested encroachment is over top of an existing legal encroachment, which is the boathouse. And so we are not actually increasing the area of encroachment at all as to the porch corner. There's still going to be an encroachment there. It just is 8 feet lower where the top of the boathouse is. So as to condition number 4, we're making every effort to keep our variance requests within the spirit of the ordinance. We've worked through multiple designs to minimize the needed relief. As to public safety, having a proper front door will certainly provide a better situation for fire and rescue access, and replacing an aging deck structure will improve the safety of our property. We believe that the granting of these requests will provide substantial justice to us as homeowners and improve the appearance and property value for our neighbors. We will also be employing local builders to do the work, and we'll be adding to the tax base, which I'm sure you can appreciate now more than ever. In conclusion, we have presented specific evidence that refutes the zoning inspector's assessment that our request is completely due to the desires and the personal circumstances of the applicant. We respectfully ask for your support. And I've also summarized what we believe are the findings and fact that we have proven. They are attached as the final page of the handout, the additional handout. We're glad to answer any follow-up questions. And thank you for your patience.
The deck you're proposing will be a straight line across here,
Yes, sir.
so you would eliminate this portion of the existing.
That is a stair that goes down so that we can get down to the ground. That little piece will stay, but you see, most of that is actually inside of the setback, and a stair is permitted to go outside of the setback. But yes, the green part will be removed, and then there's several.
Over
yeah,
here, this-
Yes, sir. There's several different triangles that will be removed, and will decrease the impact. Thank you. Do we have
Yes, if
anyone
Mr.
from the
Gahagan
public?
has any rebuttal to their presentation. And Mr. Gahagan, just to be clear, this dark blue corner on this drawing here is over the boathouse. It would not encroach on any other.
It is, but the ordinance does take from any new construction, so because it's over existing encroachment, the ordinance doesn't really consider it in any regard. And I would like to say the evidence submitted regarding the structure and sides and notarized documents, I saw none of that. That was submitted to you tonight without my review, so just new evidence.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, if you would, if you will read the four conditions again, so if there's any discussion
All right.
of the board.
See, again, the four conditions would be that unnecessary hardship would result in the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property.
And address both variances at the same time, or it's one at a time?
I would say it might be better to address them separately since they're two separate requests.
So the first variance is the front porch.
It would be the front overhang, correct. 2 foot 10 inches. Because it is new construction, it's a 2 foot 10 request.
I would suggest that the front overhang of 1 foot, additional foot, would not impose a hardship that would preclude any other reasonable use of the property. On the other hand, I don't believe it's that significant, and it is well behind what the, so understand this, in this drawing here, this is the garage, so that the actual building part of the garage is only set back by 9 feet from the road. Is that right?
Again, I don't know
This is
what's
the
in the
garage.
house. The evidence for
This
that
is
was
part- this
presented
is part of
tonight,
the
so I
house.
don't know. The garage is where the overhang is going to be over
Right.
where the driveway leads in.
But the overhang would be well behind what
Correct.
this existing part of the house is.
Well, I think in all fairness to you, if new evidence has been presented tonight that you had not had an opportunity to look at and make a decision, that you be given the opportunity to review this information and then take a look at it and see if you need to make a change. If you don't need to make a change,
I
you
mean-
stand by your original decision, then we go with it.
What's inside the structure is not relevant to the ordinance, to the variance. It's not to the structure, it's to the land. So
What was that new information to the land?
nothing
Was
land-based.
presented tonight?
anyways. It was structure-based.
Okay.
Well, I would suggest on condition 1 for variance 1 that it doesn't impose a hardship that prevents using the property, but on the other hand, I would suggest that that could be lived with in view of the circumstances of how the building's laid out.
Are they asking for two separate variances here? One for the
Yeah.
overhang on the front porch and one for the
When
one for the open steps in the area beyond the original footprint in the backyard, in the patio?
we're just doing variance 1, yeah.
Okay.
That's the second condition.
The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions common to the neighborhood or general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance.
Well, I don't think it meets the strict definition of a hardship, but on the other hand, like I said, with the, given the interior design of the house and what they're proposing to do to turn that into an entrance hall without reconfiguring the entire interior of the house, it may be a reasonable request.
I fail to see the hardship in relation to the land, if the land is of a typical slope and is fairly common to the rest of the community, regardless of the interior of the home. That's my catch. Is the feature, the hardship related of a feature to the land?
Number 3, Andy.
Item 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner.
Well, hardship that they are claiming that is not the result of their actions, i.e. the interior design of the home.
And item 4, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that the general public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved.
Is that an opinion?
You seem to be doing a good job on it.
Again, I would like to believe that a net reduction in encroachment, to use the party's words, is not consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. If they were asked to rebuild within the existing guidelines, I don't see how a net reduction is consistent. But I do understand the hardship of needing a roof overhang in the front door. You don't want your front door exposed to, the elements necessarily.
Shall we move to review variance 2, the 10-foot request for the rear, or is there more discussion on 1?
We may as well vote on variance 1, I guess.
Yeah, I think you probably need to vote on 1 before we jump into 2.
So we're talking about the front, right?
Overhang, one foot
Overhang over
overhang
the
of
garage.
the additional 1 foot.
Now, this extension of an existing roof overhang is just for the creation of an entrance. So, in essence, it's only a 9-foot difference from where the already encroachment exists from the garage, where the garage lies. Is that correct? Am I understanding this correct? According to the
You'll have to ask, probably
Setback Study?
ask them, I don't know.
Or Mr. Gayhagan?
What was the question exactly? The request is for a 2-foot 10-inch variance.
Okay.
Because it is new construction, the ordinance does allow within the same footprint, but that standard is probably borderline an improper standard in the ordinance. It's essentially staff granting a administrative variance. If the structure is pre-existing in the setback, I'm administratively approving a new variance for any time somebody adds back on. But this is a new overhang. This is an overhang that doesn't exist on the structure as it is now.
Okay.
So again, to be clear, talking about where the garage door is now would be converted to a front entrance. There's an existing overhang of, it already encroaches into the 20-foot setback from the street. Is that right?
It's a 30-foot setback, but yes, it does. I think it's probably like 1 foot 10 inches, something like that.
And so they want an additional to the existing overhang.
It would be a new overhang, but yes, it would essentially encroach 1 foot beyond the existing overhang, above it, I guess.
Which would be 2 feet 9 inches encroached into the 30-foot required setback.
2 foot 10.
So it would increase it to 210. That's what I'm saying.
Well, the existing setback encroaches the 30-foot required setback by 1 foot 10 inches or so. They're asking to increase that to 2 foot 10 inches so they can have it. So basically, if they put a front door there without the variance, they would essentially have no shelter over the front door. So they'd have 1 foot 10 inch shelter.
Not necessarily. Architecturally, it could be rendered, and the whole thing could be set back. It's just like going into the front of a house, and you got your front door set in. It could be done. Just move everything back and leave your existing line where it is. And architecturally, it could be done there. Everything just sits back in the garage. That could be done without encroaching on the variance.
And you set the whole wall back?
Yes, just build it out and set it in. And you could still have the same framework, but it would just be set back a few, a foot and a half in the garage, or 1.2 feet in the garage. And you could still have the same layout, the same,
Are you talking about building the door back into the garage?
yes.
Recess back into
Yeah,
the wall.
yes, right. Everything could be recessed. That could be done. I've seen too many houses built that way.
There's a lot of houses built that way.
Yeah.
I guess we need a motion. Sometime.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve it on the fact of what Mr. Matheny come up with is actually over the line, but the enhancement and, I guess due to the fact that it's inconvenient for them to be going through the bedrooms, I make a motion that we approve this variance. I don't know what the number was.
2 foot 10 inch, 2 foot 10 inch front yard variance request for variance 1.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Crisco, second by Commissioner Matheny. More discussion?
I don't necessarily see the unnecessary hardship, but that's all.
Does this vote require supermajority?
It does, yes. 4 of the 5.
Or what?
So you just we asked for a motion, so now you've got to approve it and ask for the vote and see how it goes.
Any further
I thought that's
discussion?
when we work.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I still think it could be done without it. I think there's some options.
There's a vote on the floor, Harvey.
I know.
Okay.
Don't have to remind me of that. I support it conditionally. because I still think there are ways it could be done. There are other options. And it shouldn't be solely set on the fact that what was presented to us is the only way that it could be done. There are other ways it could be done.
You voting
So I support it,
Artie?
with heartburn.
So you voting? You voting yes?
Yes.
And I vote no. So,
I don't like it, but
okay. There's 3 to 2 then.
Requires a supermajority.
Hmm.
Variances are the last that require a supermajority. 4 votes required to be carried.
And I think the vote total was Crisco, Matheny, and Mack in favor, opposed Robinson and Henson. So the motion's denied. Andrew, you want to start on the second request?
Second request, unnecessary hardship would result in the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. This is review for variance 2, which would be a 10-foot rear yard setback variance to enlarge and cover an existing deck.
I think you can make a case that, again, due to the peculiar circumstances in that neighborhood and the lot, shape, et cetera, that the 4 conditions have been met. You could also make a case that there are other ways of dealing with this, but it would affect the size and shape of the deck. And I think the fact that it's over an existing structure is also a extenuating circumstance. So I'll move to approve the variance.
I'll second it.
I have a motion to approve the second part, a second. Any other discussion? Okay, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
If I heard correctly, Matheny, Crisco in favor, and opposed Robinson, Mack, and Henson. Is that correct? So the motion's denied. Chairman, Commissioners, the next 1, 2, 3, 4 public hearings are all related to budgetary matters. And as I have mentioned earlier, not just at this meeting, but at previous Board of Commissioners meetings, that the board had made the decision for 3 reasons to do continuation budgets, all COVID related. One being that the public, one being that it's a tax revow year. And so the county was set to mail out tax revow notices in March. Not wanting to mail those values out when people were not able to come to the tax office and discuss their values, we felt was injurious, you felt that it was injurious to the public. and that we do not want to heighten the anxiety and tension of a pandemic time, and so the board made the decisions to delay those mailings. Not having revenue neutral figures made the budget season an impossibility. Other reasons being that the public could not come and participate in a public hearing. This is the first meeting we've really tried to conduct any business, even though we're still in phase 2 and it's supposed to only be essential businesses. And so for those reasons, the board made the decision to adopt continuing budgets. I know there's a lot of rules of order about setting as the fire tax district, the board for the fire tax district. The first 3 public hearings, Baden Lake, Lake Tillery, and Wadeville, you're supposed to go into session as the governing body of those commissions. I do not believe there's anybody here from any one of the 3 fire districts to speak. So at this point, I think it would probably be a formality you can dispense with. We're going to have public hearings again when we adopt a true budget for FY21. And so the public will see what the recommended tax rate is from the county manager's perspective. And so if it meets the approval of the board, my recommendation is for the next 4 public hearings is to forego the formality of going in and out as the Baden Lake Fire District Commission, the Lake Tillery Fire District Commission, the Wadeville Fire District Commission. The motion before the board is to do a continuation budget, which will allow us to continue to meet operational expense, not allow any new capital projects after June 30th until we can adopt a formal budget sometime September, August, September, when we know more. Again, the third reason being that the board wanted to do a continuation budget is because of the revenue uncertainty. Federal government sent down $4 billion to the state of North Carolina. In round 1, the state legislature appropriated $1.5 billion to the counties. Of that, $692,000 went to Montgomery County, which is one of the items on the county manager's report. I saw yesterday where the state pilfered about $500 million out of the remaining $2.5 billion to meet their budget shortfalls. One of the things that they asked us not to do with that Federal CARES Act money was to meet budget shortfalls, but they plugged the gap on theirs. Hopefully, there will be some money coming from the remaining $2.5 billion to help us be held harmless to some of our revenue losses. But that's yet to be determined. So again, another reason why the county is just adopting a continuing budget. I'll be glad to answer any questions I can. The finance director is not here tonight, as most department heads are not. I've asked them not to participate, again, trying to social distance and not trying to conduct any new business until we really can invite the public in. So, Chairman, I would suggest that I step aside, and if anybody from the public wishes to come forward and speak to any 4 of these budgets, we will certainly give them the opportunity. If they do not, then I will come back and ask the board to make a motion to adopt a continuation budget for all 3 fire districts as well as the county proper.
Anybody here wish to speak from Baden Lake, Lake Tillery, or Wadeville Fire Tax District?
Again, I commend the folks of Montgomery County that are trying to stay safe and follow the governor's directives. Hopefully we'll have some good news for us coming about COVID-19. I know many people are hard at work at a vaccine. These are difficult times, but we will continue to do our best and ask the people to do the same. So unless there's any questions from the board on these continuation budgets, the motion would be to adopt a continuation budget to allow the county to continue to meet operational expenses based on the current FY20 budget for Baden Lake, Lake Tillery, Wavell Fire, and the county property.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Commissioner
I'll
Briscoe
second
made
it.
the motion. Commissioner Mack, you second?
Yes.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so the county will continue on a continuing budget. And we will address the issue again next month as we try to make plans around COVID-19. The next item is the county manager's budget. The first item is the CARES Act funding, which I just referenced, that the state of North Carolina legislature appropriated $692,000 to Montgomery County. Those funds were supposed to be to reimburse the county and the municipalities for any expenses related to COVID-19 and also to better prepare the county for any continued activities related to COVID-19. Two of the commissioners and myself met with the mayors of all 5 towns and the staff of those towns to discuss those expenditures and to come up with a plan of how we best thought to meet the needs of Montgomery County. You see the minutes from those meetings. The recommendation was to allocate $192,000 of the $692,000 related to reimbursement for expenses related to personal protective equipment, the masks, the plexiglass shields, testing. The county has hired off-duty paramedics who have been trained to administer the swab test, and you heard Mary Perez earlier speak to all the tests that have been administered in the county to date. And so that $192,000 has been set aside to reimburse the county for those PPE expenses and also for the costs related to testing, not only the people administering tests, but getting the test to Atrium Health to be examined and the results back to us. We've also hired 3 part-time persons in the health department to assist Mary and her staff with the contact tracing. I think her number earlier was 240 cases, and so they're having to make all those contacts and people they may have been in contact with, so we are incurring expense related to that. As far as the remaining $500,000, it was the opinion of the collective group of elected officials and staff that this COVID-19 has exposed a food shortage weakness in Montgomery County. For example, our Meals on Wheels, we heard Stephanie Smith, the DSS director, speak a while ago, that due to COVID-19, we had to stop hot meals for seniors. We had to then stop frozen meals for seniors, and we had to go to shelf-stable activities. The food pantry in Montgomery County, there are several local entities working, but the county works with the Council on Aging and the one in Star that also does CIS and the Backpack Pals. The county had a board of commissioners that already allocated this year $250,000 to produce a new facility to replace the leaking pantry facility in Star. That facility is going to be located here across from the library. The recommendation from the group was to use that remaining $500,000 to expand that footprint, to allow the capability of doing a hot meal kitchen in the event of any future disaster. And so you're not supposed to allocate this money for hurricane relief or et cetera, but not only could we use it in times of crisis due to pandemics, but we can use it for other things. We can also use it for the cooperative extension, some of their food programs, and as a community meeting place. And so at any rate, the recommendation was to expand the small footprint of that pantry to make it as large as possible and to include this functional kitchen that the county can rely on. Mr. Hildreth has been working with the Council on Aging and some builders. He's got a budget worked up that will allow us possibly, working with the Council on Aging, to have a 6,000 square foot building on that space that would be used jointly as a food pantry and also as a soup kitchen. and that would include the commercial hood and the kitchen equipment, the walk-in freezers, So with the board's approval, and I've already had to submit the paperwork to the state, from the state to the feds, that was due yesterday. I submitted that application, $192,000 would remain here to reimburse us and the towns for the costs related to testing and PPE, the $500,000, and they have a box of eligible expenses, and one of them was the delivery of food supplies to seniors and other vulnerable populations. And so I checked that box and indicated that we would be allocating $500,000 to the nonprofit COA, Council on Aging, to go towards that expanded project. The funds have to be expended by December 31st, so we're on a very tight window with them. The chairman and I are meeting with the chair of the Council on Aging Thursday at 2 o'clock if another commissioner wants to join us in those discussions, and we'll move forward with that project. So my request is a motion to approve my action of submitting the application, $192,000 for the testing and PPE and $500,000 for the expanded facility to include kitchen, hot meals for seniors and other vulnerable folks.
Madam Chairman, I just want to say that this was not just an action taken by this board. Like Matthew alluded to earlier, every municipality and city manager that Mount Gilead, Bisco, and Troy were present when this decision was made. Absolutely everyone was on board, and I think this is a big step in the right direction for this county with everyone absolutely overwhelming, pushing towards the same goal. So I just, it was a group effort, and I'm very proud of the county for acknowledging that issue and saying we have a solution to it and working together to see this come to fruition. And with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve the county manager's plan and the county's plan for the allocations of the CARES Act money. Or approve the submission of the plan.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Henson, second by Commissioner McNaney to approve that plan. Any more discussion or questions? If not, how do you vote?
Aye.
Everybody in favor?
Mhm.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Next item on the county manager's report is a budget amendment for the field house and auxiliary storage building for Montgomery County Schools, and $500,000 to the ag education project at Montgomery Community College. As the board is aware, the bids for the Central High School and the shared CTE campus came in over budget. The board did not want any academic space cut, and so the decision was reached with the Board of Ed and Community College trustees that we would set aside athletics, in particular in this case the field house and this auxiliary building for sports-related equipment until the high school was complete. The USDA required us to hold back $3 million in contingencies in case there was any unforeseen cost to that academic portion of the building. As we get to the final stages of this building, we have only touched a small portion of that contingency that we were required to set back. And so in part of our agreement with the Board of Ed and the trustees, we now want to make the budget amendment to move $2 million to Montgomery County Schools to allow them to handle the construction of the field house and the auxiliary storage building. Through this process, the college applied for Golden Leaf funds to introduce the advanced agriculture component to our campus. They were awarded $375,000 by Golden Leaf. The board met with them in a work session, and so the $500,000 appropriation then is related to cost to make that ag education a reality. As I mentioned in my memo, the budget amendment is realizing funds from this year. We had under budgeted sales tax revenue, and so even with the COVID shutdown, we were able to realize our revenue. As always, department heads try to treat taxpayer monies like their own monies and only try to spend on what's necessary. And so we are able to realize in this year's budget, FY20, this $2.5 million. And so there will not be any new debt brought on by this field house or auxiliary building or the ag component. In fact, that when we close this project out with the USDA, that we're going to borrow less money than was originally projected.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept this budget amendment?
I just had a question, Matthew, on that recreation money from the landfill. Was anything tied in there? Did I see something or?
No, sir. I mentioned in the minutes of that meeting with the Board of Ed and the trustees that I brought up the issue of the natatorium, and I said that is still of interest to the board of looking to how that would work and who in the public would be able to use that building. I said, though, for next year, FY21, college, you've got to build this ag piece. Schools, you've got to build a field house, and et cetera. I said, let's set that project aside till FY22. And so they agreed that they still want it, but it was just set aside. But it has still been swirling in the community, you know, when's the swimming pool coming? And so it would be nice to go ahead with that project, but I think everybody's plate's about as full as it can get right now.
So we'll be able to do the ag component and the field house and all of that.
And the auxiliary storage building, yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm ready to move on. You ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
I make the motion.
Commissioner Wright made the motion to accept the budget amendment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Matheny. Any other questions or comments? If not, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item on the county manager's report is another partnership we have with the Board of Education. The county has set aside 1 cent of the ad valorem base to take care of existing educational facilities. We did not want, you did not want, to go out and build a new high school and then let the other buildings deteriorate. And so the board set aside in perpetuity, at least until another board changes it, 1 cent of the ad valorem base to go to that building. This board also, when the voters voted in the quarter-cent sales tax, this Board of Commissioners allocated it to the school system. So the schools have those monies available that allow them to do renovations, or in this case, an addition to East Middle School. There was not enough money in that fund, however, to allow them to do it all at one time. The agreement we worked out, since we allow the Board of Education to have a fund balance, is that they would use their fund balance to pay the upfront cost because the demand was now. East Middle was built smaller than West, but population shift since the buildings were built, they were coming out of the gills, so to speak, with students, and so that was needed now. The Board of Ed had some fund balance, and so they were able to step in, pay the cost. The county said, as we collect this quarter-cent sales tax, we will pay you back for that expense. And so that was the agreement that we reached. And what the motion or the item before the board is to allow them to move those capital funds back to their current budget. Try to explain how that works. Their fund balance is current money that they can spend on capital and non-capital items. The $2 million you just gave them in the previous motion goes to that field house. They cannot spend it on anything but capital. They can't give themselves raises, they can't hire new teachers, can't buy whatever. Has to go to capital. Us paying them back on that quarter-cent sales tax, that money's for facilities. So when they take the money back, it has to be spent on facilities. But they spent the money out of their current budget. So the request from the Board of Education is, since we're paying ourselves back, let us put it back in the pot that it came from. That requires your approval. That's the checks and balance system the Board of Commissioners has over the Board of Ed. When you earmark money for them, they have to spend it according to those directions capital fund. So, motion for the board, unless there's any other question, is to allow Montgomery County Schools to reimburse their current fund balance from those capital funds for East Middle Edition.
So the money they did take out was for that facility.
That's what
Yeah,
it's-
they sent the bills into us. CD, the finance director, kept that up. As money comes in from the quarter-cent sales tax, he's been paying them back. After a year of paying them back, that money is still restricted since it's coming from that capital quarter cent, so they're wanting to use it the way they could before.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, I make the motion.
Commissioner Mack made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Henson. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just as an aside, there's another reason that you give them a capital appropriation. They don't have to do the split with charter schools if it's capital from the county as opposed to current. The next item on the county manager's report is a motion to adopt the resolution establishing a reappraisal fund. We are required by law at least every 8 years to do a reappraisal. You're very familiar with that. We did one this year. I guess I can stop there and say, you, the Board of Commissioners, also sits as the Board of Equalization and Review. Those hearings are next week, Monday through Friday, from 9 till 12, if I'm not mistaken. We have had to date, as of this morning, about 400 appeals that have come in. Staff downstairs in the tax office contacts the individuals when they get these appeals, tries to understand what their point is, goes back out and does a reinspection. They have worked about half the number of appeals that have come in. If the homeowner's point is valid, then they are given the latitude downstairs to make the adjustment. As of right now, we've only have 3 officially scheduled for next week. But again, they come in at one big pile here, so on the last couple of days. The deadline was yesterday, the 15th, but you have to allow 3 days for any late postmarks to come in or anything that was postmarked by the 15th. So I do think we will probably have a busy week, but nothing like it was 8 years ago when we were the most undervalued county in the state according to the sales to assess ratio. So you're very familiar with the reappraisal funds. The general statutes require you to set aside money each year looking forward to that. Revals are very expensive. Even for a small county like us that tries to do some of it in-house, you're looking at $400,000 or $500,000 at least to cost. And then if that's appealed to the Property Tax Commission, you have legal fees associated with that. And so knowing that local governments don't have an abundance of funds, the state stepped in and said, look, you've got to set money aside every year in line with what you think your cost is going to be 8 years from now. And so the resolution before the board establishes that fund and requires you as part of your budget process every year to put that much money aside, that amount of money aside, so you will not be caught off guard when it's time for the rebound.
Okay, so I need a motion to
Adopt the
that
resolution that establishes the reappraisal fund.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Christo made the motion. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried.
I'm going to ask Mr. Gilbert to come up for the next 3 items. They're all water projects. While he does that, I'm just going to hand out this debt summary for our enterprise fund, which is our water fund.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chris has done a great service to the county in that he goes out and applies for grants to try to offset the cost for these projects. And he's done very well with duct tape and baling wire, trying to keep things running. So all 3 of these projects are very much needed. And he has been able to go out and in essence give us about 50% grant for these projects. which is no small feat. So Chris, we certainly appreciate that. At the end of the day, costs just continue to rise. One of the items, the booster pump station, if you remember, what the engineers told us, we were looking to replace booster pump station 1 and booster pump station 2. Chris, ballpark age on those facilities
30-plus years.
and typical life of a booster pump station.
With occasional upgrades that have been put off about 25 years.
So that they are well past their useful life. But engineers' estimate on what each of them, 1 and 2, should cost, the bids came in double for those 2 pump stations. And actually, the board made the decision a few months back to go back and rebid those again, hoping that when the economy slowed down, if we, had the COVID or whatever, that decision ended up saving you about $180,000. And so he's got the bids back. We still can't afford to do both projects. Booster Pump Station 1 is the most critical. Chris had already got the state's approval. So we had 50% awards for both 1 and 2. They let us combine both of the award money for Booster Pump Station 1. So the county cost is still at 50%. And so he's asking for you to adopt a project budget before the end of the year, so when we continue with our continuation budget in July, he can continue to work on this project. What I provided here was just a look at our debt service. Water production, water distribution is not a cheap endeavor. You will see that at the bottom of this page, the School of Government, LGC, wants enterprise funds to have about 15% benchmark for debt to expenses. We are running at about 23% debt ratio, which is better than we were a couple years back when we were all the way up to 28% debt ratio. I provided this document that you can see when Chris does these 3 projects, that debt comes on the far right-hand side of page 1, and you can follow it through. Not only did he get grant money to offset the cost of these projects, but for the remainder cost of it, he got 0% loan, which is very good. For example, the 4 up above it, one of them has I have the figures in front of me, about a 3.47% loan. The 4th one there on your list, FY13 water capital project, that's $4.2 million over 3.47% interest rate. So that 0% loan certainly helps. But at any rate, this document follows out that debt load. You see that it does not rise as high as it was back in 2016. I will mention also, I've got CD working on interest rates. That largest of our existing debt that's at 3.47. If we were able to increase our debt service payment, BB&T gave us a quote to move that to a 1.85% interest rate. Yes, we would have to pay more because we're shortening the duration of it, but if we were able to go and pay off that one loan in 4 years instead of the current schedule, we'd save about $1 million in interest. We do have some fund balance. I think we're about $6 million fund balance in the enterprise fund. So we might be able to do some combination. Of course, the LGC has to approve all our financing, but we are looking at that. Again, trying to take advantage of opportunities where we can, low interest rates now. But again, I just wanted to provide that board before disclosure, but I think I'll let Chris speak to the urgency of these projects. They are needed, and also that 50% grant money will go away if we don't utilize it now. So, Chris, do you want to speak to that? The chemical feed project, this is a true testament to Chris and his staff. Those bids came in so high and so much of the work was labor-related. Chris contacted the state and said, I think my staff can do a lot of this stuff. Can we work on an in-house reimbursement to cover the cost of these items? The state said yes, they would work with Chris, so instead of going out and paying a contractor to come in and do this work, he's wanting to undertake it with his staff and with local electricians, local plumbers, et cetera, and reimburse us that. So that's why he's asking you to establish a capital project budget ordinance at much lower than the bids that came in from the contractor to try to save the county money. And then the last item is the raw water pump station. The board, several years back, did the rehab of the intake itself, the bank. This is the pumping station at the bank that moves water up to the facility to be treated. And that one actually came in under budget. So you are seeing some relief in the construction world now, that some bids are coming back to reason. So, Chris, I didn't mean to.
It's okay, you did an excellent job. Going over, the projects of the board, we discussed these several times when we had to go through funding through Diener, through Division of Water Infrastructure. So the board's familiar, we have to pass resolutions to accept funding and things like that. But recently, we've bid all three. Actually, I'll take the raw water pump station first. It bid back in March, 3 months ago. And so that project, I'm up here requesting a motion to actually tentatively award that contract to allow the contractor to start purchasing bonds and execute a construction contract to get started on that one. The first two just happened to rebid recently, and in light of adopting a continuing budget, we want to go ahead and establish these project budget ordinances this month so that we can award those, or in the chemical feed project's case, just move forward with construction in it. But there will be a future award for Booster Pump Station 1. But just we hadn't had time to get that far yet. We bid it last Thursday. So the booster pump stations did come in lower than last spring's bid by, I think Matthew said $180,000. So that was good news, and that's within budget, within the budget ordinance. So if it pleases the board, the motion, I guess we'll take them one at a time, is to establish a capital project budget ordinance for Booster Pump Station 1 project.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Henson made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Carter Knight. Okay. Any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. Then the second one, it also recently bid the chemical feed project, but we started negotiating because they came in over budget. Started negotiating, and the scope just got so narrow that it's just hard to imagine what you were paying the general contractor for. So this is a case where we still need to establish a project budget ordinance to comply with the funding, but we'll just move forward with it in-house.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Frisco made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Matheny. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Carried.
And the raw water station rehab, it's replacing both pumps, all electrical motor control center, control wiring. So it's completely rehabbing basically the mechanical and plumbing systems inside the facility, and not so much the bank stabilization we did back in 2013, 2012. So it's bid, and the low bidder was Gilbert Engineering, who also did the raw water bank stabilization project. And so bids came in, they also came in under it by about $400,000. So that was really good news, and we've already established a project budget for that. So the motion is to tentatively award the bid for the raw water rehabilitation project.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Matheny, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Henson. Any questions or comments? If not, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Chris, we
Chris.
certainly appreciate it, and, again, appreciate what you've done with the high school, your oversight there. That's something that Chris is custom made for, is staying behind contractors and asking difficult questions and looking out for the taxpayers. And we will replace the high school project with these services. All right, the next item on my county manager's report is to approve a new 5-year agreement with Republic Services for the hauling and processing from the convenience site waste. This contract has gone through a period of negotiations. The current contract with Republic expired in April. That contract was signed 10 years ago. It had a 5-year renewal, and so what Republic is requesting is another 5-year contract with a 5-year renewal. In large part, this is just a continuation of the contract we have. Since the end of the year, because of COVID-19 and the costs related with hauling trash, there has been a large CPI index increase. And so the upfront CPI for this year is 3.9%, which is in line with our old contract. Every year it was adjusted by CPI. And so we will continue on that CPI for the hauling and processing. So it's basically the same contract we had. The one thing that's changing is a CPI is now being added to the compactors and the open top containers. Republic provides about 14 of these compactors and open top containers. Before, the county was just paying a set price of $225 a month, and that has been in place since the beginning of the contract. The cost associated with repairing and replacing these compactors has increased, and so our negotiated settlement was that we would allow a CPI to be added to the compactors. And I thought that was fair and equitable. And so the motion before the board is to continue the contracted relationship with Republic Services, a local company, to provide our hauling and processing from convenience sites with the terms indicated on the sheet.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept this agreement?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Mack, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Matheny. Any discussion or questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed.
Next item is an appointment, the Board of Commissioners to approve an appointment to the Planning Services for the Aged for a term of June 17th, 2020 to July 16th, 2021, Miss Margaret Green.
Move to approve the appointment of Margaret Green to the Planning Services for the Aging Committee.
Motion by Commissioner Matheny. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried.
The last item I have, other than the county reports, is appointments as well, but if I can, I'm going to harken back to our discussion on the enterprise fund and water. Several counties comment, Darrell Fry from Randolph County for one person, to say, you know, Montgomery County is blessed to have 452 miles rural water lines. I wish Randolph County, he said, would had the foresight to run all these water lines. And we are lucky to have those water lines, but those water lines are wildly expensive to maintain. And that water plant facility is wildly expensive to maintain. And we don't have enough money banked to meet all the costs that are coming up. What we need is a labor force additional residents and that labor force to bring new business and that business to buy water. To go back to the days when Montgomery County used to sell twice as much water as it did now, that pays for that rural system. And so that's what we're all working towards, is that workforce and those businesses to come here. And so the next item on the county manager report is the appointments to the Tourism Development Authority, the TDA. Tourism development is a big part of the growth of this county, image of the county. We're looking to them, looking to all stakeholders to pitch in and to bring folks here, to people to see the wonderful attributes of Montgomery County and that we can work together to build this county. And so as the board knows, you suspended the occupancy tax in order to evaluate the TDA, marketing of the county. You got the stakeholders together, you hired a firm, and a master plan was laid out. One of the board members, the chairman, Wynn Dozier, and others are working, have constructed a welcome center across the street, and that's one facet. And so it's with great pleasure that I have the honor to recommend to the board the approval of these three inaugural members of the TDA 2.0. We're expecting great things. Chris Hilders, myself, and I know y'all are here to give them their support. They'll be working with the Saturday group. They'll be coming to the board every year to talk about, the next steps of this plan. So we're very excited about that. The finance director, I sent out the notices to the hotels and the Airbnbs and all the people that are renting their homes that the county's collecting this tax. We've already communicated to this new board via Chairman Dozier that they can go ahead and hire the part-time staff for the Welcome Center and get that up and running as soon as that they can. But again, Chairman Dozier is here. If you want to come and speak, or you can speak from there.
Yeah,
But we are tremendously excited.
I just wanted to thank all of you for reinstating the board and reinstating the tax. And I'm really looking forward to this. I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of things that we can do as a board. And so we are working diligently on the Discover URA Welcome Center across the street. Can't wait to show you that. As a matter of fact, when I was sitting back there, the design firm is working on it. I texted her and asked her if she could do a 3D walkthrough that will show you. If I can get that, if she can do it. If not, I've got plans, and we will start construction in August. We'll be open by the end of August, maybe early September. And we would like you folks to all come through one night before we open. And so thank you for the support there. And I can't wait to communicate to you our vision for that building and the purpose of that building and how it can help us down the road. So if there's any questions you would like to ask me, again, I'm just thankful for your support, and I appreciate your confidence in me in leading this board, and I'm looking very much forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This time next year, we will have the chairman back, and we'll be talking about the new standalone website that they'll have for the TDA, and the marketing materials and the videos, and of course the Discovery Welcome Center that he just mentioned. So a lot of good things are going to happen by this occupancy tax. I will mention one thing. I mentioned it to Chris and some other folks. I think we all got the notice that the forest is going to expand the trailhead here on 24-27. They recognize that people are parking along 24-27. They know that, thanks to y'all's efforts, that the 4-laning from the new bridges to the Troy bypass is going to take place. So they're wanting to redesign that trailhead to put in a vault toilet and some additional parking places. They are now soliciting comments for that. I know my suggestion was to move the whole parking lot down to River Road, since the Forest Service owns land on River Road that butts back, and I know that would mean changing all the starts of all the trails from 24, 27, but, you know, Montgomery County is only going to continue to grow. People are only going to continue to come in larger numbers. We don't need to wedge ourselves into a small footprint right there on 24, 27, in my opinion, if there's another option, you know, on River Road to make that the main entrance into those trailheads. But I don't know if you've.
I haven't heard that, but I will say this, I think we need to think audaciously. I think we need to think out of the box. And for instance, one of the things that has occurred to us is, why don't we have a trailhead in one of our towns? Why don't we have a trailhead in Troy for Yard Trail, a spur trail? That would bring people here. They'd park their cars here. So I'm convinced that there's a lot of things we can do. We just got to think out of the box. And back when I was running a business, we had a saying that let's don't get into passive acceptance of things. And what we meant by that was sometimes things get in a state of decay, and my stores would get in a state of decay, and we would just see it and just get used to it, and we passively accepted it. And I'm going to insist that the guys on our board, and ladies, that we don't fall into that trap, that we can constantly think out of the box and try to come up with some new things for the county. So.
I agree, and one of the things we heard from the ranger who's now left to accept the job, I think, in Oregon, was don't promote, you know, the forest for hiking and mountain biking, because our facilities, mainly those parking facilities, are already at capacity. And I appreciate them wanting to put money into a vault toilet on 24, 27, but yeah, I think the number was going to whatever they have now to 40 parking places. We need to envision 400 parking places. And that little wedge of land they have there is not going to hold that. And all of us does not want to waste taxpayers' money, waste meaning build something that in 2 years is inadequate. You know, let's try, as Chairman just said, to think big and to envision this. And, you know, if there needs to be some arrangement with the towns or with the county for additional funds, matching funds to get it where it needs to be, let's have those conversations. We all know, having worked with the U.S. federal government and forestry, it's a lot of red tape to get them to do anything different. But it's kind of like working with FERC and Cube and Duke on the improvements to the boat landings. And while those facilities are much better, you're already seeing their capacity. And so,
Matthew, if I can speak to that a minute. The town of Troy has bought hundreds of acres along the Little River. If you ever YouTube the URA River kayak, you'll see hundreds of videos about people that kayak at URA. So I've heard this over and over about the overuse of these facilities up there. Well, why don't we promote the Little River? Why don't we have a water trail on the Little River? Why don't we push the town of Troy to do that? Why don't we assist the town of Troy to have mountain bike trails? Probably 90% of those people parking over there on that Wood Run trailhead you're talking about are mountain bike riders. So I think there's things we can do to relieve that pressure. We just got to think, you know, we just got to think ahead and plan down the road and then decide where the money's going to come from. And the passion, find somebody with the passion that's going to follow through and make sure it gets done.
Chairman's right. I think that parking lot expansion is in part because I think they're introducing 3 new mountain bike trails right there at that point. And so that's what's hot.
Yep, mountain biking shoot.
And he's right. A lot of people, Little River down at Pekin, that's where they're going to kayak, you know, because of overcrowding or because of motorboat activity. So we have a lot of assets. You see the right person for the job. So I'm excited about it. I know you are. Chairman, Commissioners, motion to appoint the inaugural board of the TDA, Chairman Wynn Dozier, TDA member John Shaw, TDA member Chris Cagle.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Henson, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Prisco. Anybody have any other comments or questions?
Mr. Dozier, I apologize that you are at the very back of the agenda. I'm glad you're still here at almost 8:30, and the county's very much indebted to you for your willingness to serve. And thank you for your comments tonight and for sticking around. I mean, I was glad to see you walk in when you did, but I said, man, we put him at the back of the agenda. It's going to be late tonight. So thank you.
for all you guys do.
Mhm.
A lot of time into this. And, not appreciated, underappreciated.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Chairman, that ends my report, unless there's any questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for the county manager? Okay. If not, have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Anybody in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Mike, you want to stay longer?
Keep y'all
Stay
here.
in session.
Keep y'all here, yeah.